The night my 8-year-old daughter ran through a violent storm to escape my parents' farmhouse, I thought I was driving home to rescue her. I had no idea I was about to uncover a secret my family had buried for almost 30 years. My father had locked Ellie outside because she was crying. He said the rain would teach her to be stronger. But when I found her shaking on my neighbor's porch, soaked and terrified, I realized something that changed the way I saw my entire childhood. My daughter was not the first child my father had taught that lesson to. My name is Dana Ingram. I am 38 years old and I spent 20 years as an Army medic. I learned how to stay calm during emergencies, how to recognize danger, and how to keep moving when fear wanted me to stop. But nothing prepared me for that phone call. I was more than 2 hours away at a veteran's workshop when my neighbor's number appeared on my phone. It was 11:40 at night, and a severe storm was moving across the county where my daughter was spending the weekend with my parents. Arlene told me Ellie was safe with her, but I could hear my daughter crying. Underneath it, I heard her teeth chattering. I asked how long she had been outside. Arlene paused and said, "Long enough. You need to come now. I drove through heavy rain." Then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. My parents had my number. They knew Ellie was with them. They knew the storm was dangerous. Yet neither of them had called. When I arrived, Ellie was wrapped in a blanket on Arlene's couch. Her purple sneakers were covered in mud, her hair was soaked, and her lips still had a bluish tint. She grabbed my sleeve and refused to let go. Arlene explained what happened. Ellie had been crying after my mother took away her tablet. My father decided she needed discipline. He walked her outside in her pajamas, put her on the back porch, and latched the door. He told her she could come inside when she stopped acting like a baby. Then the storm became worse. Lightning struck a nearby tree and a large branch crashed down. Ellie had been outside for almost 40 minutes before she ran through the mud toward the only porch light she could see. When I tucked the blanket around her, she whispered, "Mama, I did what you told me. I found the light." Before that, I counted the thunder so I would not cry. Across the road, my parents' farmhouse was still lit. They had been awake. They knew, and they never came looking. I confronted them that night. My father sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee as if nothing had happened. When I asked why he had locked an 8-year-old outside during a storm, he barely reacted. He said children today were too soft. Then he looked at me and said the words I had heard throughout my childhood. "It never hurt you." I took Ellie home and called my lawyer, Meredith Klein. There was a problem. Before leaving for a year-long military assignment overseas, I had signed temporary guardianship papers giving my parents legal authority over Ellie. The papers were still active until a judge terminated them. The next morning, I took Ellie to urgent care. The doctor documented her exposure and emotional distress. When the nurse asked what happened, Ellie answered honestly, "Grandpa said the rain would make me stop crying." It did not work. I just got quiet. The nurse was required to report suspected neglect. Instead of waiting for someone else, I called child services myself. That was one of the hardest calls of my life. In my family, problems stayed inside the family. You did not call the authorities on your parents. You stayed quiet, but I finally understood that silence was not protecting Ellie, it was protecting my parents. 3 days later, my parents fought back. They challenged my request to end the guardianship. Their lawyer claimed I had abandoned Ellie during my year overseas, that my new life was unstable, and that my counseling through the VA made me emotionally unfit. They even wanted my therapy records. Then their legal response contained one sentence that changed everything. They admitted the discipline had happened, but called it a long-standing family practice that had never harmed me. Never harmed me. The county investigation began. Ellie spoke with a child specialist and drew pictures of the farmhouse, the locked door, the rain, and Arlene's porch light. My father did not apologize. He told the caseworker that children needed difficult experiences and that crying was a habit that could be broken. The county eventually substantiated neglect against him. Criminal charges were not filed, but the report became powerful evidence in the guardianship case. Then my parents made an offer. They would give up the guardianship if I agreed to let Ellie spend one unsupervised weekend with them every month and signed an agreement preventing anyone from discussing what happened. My lawyer called it a good deal, no trial, no risk. My daughter would be legally mine again within days. That night, I sat beside Ellie while she slept. She woke and asked, "Mom, do I have to go back to Grandpa's farm?" I told her the judge would decide. She was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "If there is another storm, I will just count the thunder so I do not cry." That sentence destroyed me. She had already learned the same lesson I had carried since childhood. When you are scared, stay quiet. When you are hurt, survive alone. I looked at her muddy purple sneakers and made my decision. No deal. We went to court. My father testified first. He admitted locking Ellie outside and defended it as discipline. His lawyer pointed toward my military career and argued that my father had made me strong. My father looked at the judge and said, "I built her. I made her strong. Now I am doing the same thing for the little girl. For him, my entire life was proof that his methods had worked." My lawyer gave me one final chance to avoid testifying. I refused. Told the judge I wanted to testify and was willing to release my counseling records. Then, my lawyer asked me about the smokehouse. I was 9 years old when my grandfather died. He was the one person who made me feel safe enough to be a child. At his funeral, I cried. My father decided crying was weakness. That night, during a storm, he took me to the old smokehouse, put me inside, closed the door, and latched it. I sat there for hours in my funeral dress, listening to thunder through a tiny window, so I counted. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. I convinced myself that if I stopped crying, the door would open. By morning, I had learned exactly what my father wanted me to learn. Never let anyone see you need them. I carried that lesson for 29 years. I carried it through military training, deployments, grief, divorce, and motherhood. Then I looked at my father and told the court the truth. "Dad, you always said it never hurt me." It did hurt me. I just became very good at hiding it. I told the judge that therapy had not made me weak. It had taught me the difference between being strong and simply being hurt. My father suddenly shouted that he had made me what I was. The judge silenced him. Then the guardian appointed for Ellie gave his recommendation. He said my daughter had clearly identified my home as the place where she felt safe. The judge terminated my parents' guardianship, restored full custody to me, and denied court-ordered visitation. One signature ended the legal fight, but it also ended something much older. I stopped speaking to my parents. My mother never apologized. My father never admitted he was wrong. Ellie continued counseling, and her nightmares slowly faded. I started a civilian job and began rebuilding our life. Months later, another storm rolled through the valley. Ellie and I sat together on our porch while thunder moved across the sky. She smiled and started counting the seconds between lightning and thunder. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. 3 Mississippi. This time I counted with her. When we lost count, we laughed and started again. For most of my life, counting thunder meant surviving alone in the dark. Now it meant sitting beside someone who loved me. The door behind us was wide open. The porch light was on, and my daughter knew that if the storm became too strong, someone would come. That is what I finally learned. Children do not become strong because we make them suffer alone. They become strong because they know they are safe enough to ask for help. I spent 20 years learning how to save people. It took my daughter running through the rain to teach me how to save myself, and the promise I finally broke was not the promise to my father. It was the promise I made when I was 9 years old, the promise to never cry. Because sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is stop pretending they never needed anyone. And this time, when my daughter found the light, I was standing there beside her.